We are the Gibsons, and this is our Pathway story. We moved to the area in 2017, and we knew that we needed to find a church. Our family had been through a lot, and we knew that we needed to become closer to God. So our church search began, and we found Pathway on a Google search, and we're completely confused because it led us to a business center, and we didn't know what to expect. Immediately we walked in and there were smiling faces, people welcoming us in the door, and we sat through a sermon that tugged at our hearts, and we had planned to visit more churches and pick out which one was right for us, but we just kept coming back.
We got this opportunity to listen to Ryan, and we was like, let's try it again, because this was, we really like it, but let's see if we really, with some place we're going to make roots, if you will. So long story short is Ryan apparently put a camera in our house, and he was like checking up on us, and he was preaching about everything that was going on in our life at the time. We felt like that was God speaking to us. So as I guess time would have it, right now, this is where we belong, and it's part of our life.
When we had decided to make Pathway our home, we had all intentions of showing up on Sundays, blending, not really getting involved, because we thought that maybe we weren't quite there yet in our spiritual walk, maybe not qualified enough. Slowly but surely we started meeting people who were asking us to join connect groups and to be friends and to hang out outside of church. And the Lord spoke to us about serving others and serving our church, and we made a bigger commitment from there. One day, Ryan had called us. He asked us to join the Financial Peace University class, and it was quite comical to us because we
didn't think we needed it because we knew everything already about money.
Exactly. We were savers. We were not really communicating about our money.
Yeah.
We were doing great, but we were never giving the way we should have been giving. We took the class, and we learned that we needed to start giving.
Thank goodness we took this class, and we just fell head over heels. It was like marriage counseling at the same time as learning how to actually use your money efficiently. And we'd never tithed, like she said, and now we got the opportunity to say, hey, let's tithe, let's see what God's going to do for us.
Truly, the biggest burden that was on our shoulders is the house that we had left back in Huntington, West Virginia, that was still for sale. We had been praying and praying that stupid house would sell, and it never sold. Then we started hearing about the fact that our church needed a new home, and that we needed to either build, move out, we just needed money. And Eric and I decided that we would redirect our prayer about our house selling, and we started praying this prayer to God that we would give a percentage of our house sale to the church if he would just let the house sell. And within days, a woman with children walked into our house, and it was done. God answered our prayers. By learning to give and serve others,
which we did not do efficiently before.
We did not. I think it's made us more wholesome and understanding people. It's made our relationship better. It's made our home life better. It has also made us better parents.
Being able to serve and being able to bring new people to Christ is truly some gift that you can give. And if we just keep on reaching like we are, I feel like God's really going to bless us as a whole. We're the Gibsons, and that was our Pathway story.
Hey, give it up for the Gibsons. Listen, you just heard the story of a family that has made a shift in their lives from being fans to followers. And that's really what this series that we're kicking off today is all about. We're starting a series today called Not a Fan. And we're challenging our church for the next 4 weekends to really wrestle with the question, are we fans of Jesus or are we followers of Jesus? Now, all of us, I think, have an inner fan inside of us, and I want to tell you about mine because I have this deep inner fan in me, and it is a diehard Penn State football fan, which I realize I'm like walking into the lion's den as a helpless lamb right now, coming in amongst all you Mountaineers and Buckeyes, and you can all unify in your hatred for Penn State. I get it. I totally understand. But you need to understand where I came from and how it was that I got here. I was genetically programmed to be a Penn State fan, okay? I could not help it. I mean, for crying out loud, God made the sky blue and white, didn't he? He told me from the beginning of time, be a Penn State fan. My grandparents went to Penn State University, and they started the cycle. Both my parents went to Penn State University. 5 of my aunts and uncles went to Penn State University. 6 of my cousins went to Penn State University. Both of my siblings went to Penn State University. This is a problem, and I went to Penn State University. So when I say I was genetically programmed for this, I mean it. I remember as a young kid, my dad had season tickets to Penn State football. And, Penn State would have like about 8 home games a year, and I would probably make it to about 5 to 6 of those games a year. And I remember just as a little kid, like we would load up in the car at 6 in the morning. The game would be starting at noon, and it would be a 3-hour trip from northwest Pennsylvania to get to central Pennsylvania. And, of course, we had to add an hour for the fighting of traffic, but we would roll down into State College, Pennsylvania. We always had the same McDonald's we'd go to. We'd get a breakfast sandwich, at McDonald's. Then we'd drive from there, and we'd go up to the fields. They had these fields where you would park, but you had to park like a mile away. Like you could see Beaver Stadium out on the hill, but you had to like hoof it to get there. And so I would, grab my dad's hand and we'd, walk along, and I just would smell the brats and the hamburgers and hot dogs coming off the grills that people had. I'd always look over, there'd be some, drunk college kids either peeing or puking over there in the weeds, and over here somebody dancing on top of an RV waving their Penn State flag. And I just remember this growing up. I loved those Saturdays. We'd get into the stadium, and we just have to go through all these ramps up and up and up and up and up to go way up into the stadium and then come down into our seats. And our seats were in section WJ, row 36. I'll never forget. And I just would scream my lungs out at those games. And it was a good Saturday. I knew it was a good Saturday if I couldn't talk when I was on the drive home. If I had lost my voice on the drive home, it was a good Saturday of Penn State football. So this was my family growing up, and we all have an inner fan inside of us for something. And you probably have an inner fan too, and I'm going to guess that it's not Penn State football at all that gets your inner fan going. So here's the deal. The Apostle Paul, the greatest missionary in Christian history, once said the words that I have become all things to all people so that by all means possible I might be able to lead some people to Christ. Basically, Paul said, I've conformed myself to people so that they can hear the message of the gospel. So I'm going to do the unthinkable, and I'm going to take this off because I do not want this to be a barrier to you this morning to hearing what God may have for you. So you can all say goodbye to my Penn State jersey. And now you don't have to rub it in. Would it all help you all to hear the message if I wore this instead this morning? Would that get you? All right. So here's the deal. For one time, and one time only in my life, and only because I really want you to hear what God has to say, and I want to see you in the kingdom of heaven someday, I will wear this jersey. Get your picture now. This will never, ever, ever happen again. This is the last time, unless I lose a really bad bet. But I got to tell you, I will rub it in when my Nittany Lions beat your Buckeyes in about 8 weeks, all right? Just so you know, it's coming from the platform. Listen, we all have an inner fan. And we all have this thing inside of us that wants to be associated with some sports team or some band or some crowd of people. And we want to be associated with that community of people and what they represent. And so maybe you're here today, you're a huge NFL fan or a huge NBA fan or a Buckeye fan. But here's the deal. Maybe some of you aren't even sports people, but you're still a fan of something. So our worship leader, you guys every week get the opportunity to hear this awesome band that comes up on this platform and plays. And our worship leader, Dave Queen, is not a sports guy, but he is a huge music guy. And I want to show you what Dave is a fan of. This is Dave showing up at his favorite band in the world is Kiss, all right? I just love it that our worship leader loves Kiss. And he got a picture with Kiss because he's a massive raving fan of Kiss. And so here's the deal. Whether it's a sports team or it's a band or it's a movie star or it's a movie genre or it's something, there's something that you're a fan of. There's some community that you associate with and say, man, I'm one of them. I'm one of those people. And I'm about what those people are about. And I love being associated with that. There's something wired inside of us to want to become fans who join a community of other fans to kind of love something. And 2,000 years ago, the people of Israel, while they lived in a completely different time period, in a completely and utterly different world than what we live in today, they still had an inner fan inside of them. I want you to try for just a moment to take yourself back several thousand years in history, if you could, and just imagine that you are an ancient Jewish person and that you live right around the year AD 30. You live in a society and in a culture that is worlds different than the one we live in here. There's no electricity. There's no lights to just flip on. There's no, stores to go to or malls to go to or cars. All the travel is done either on like the backs of donkeys or on feet. You live in small cities with stone walls to them. Your life is agriculturally driven. So you're most likely either a farmer or a fisherman. That's primarily what you probably do with your life. Right? Your whole life is spent in kind of a small region that you can walk to or move to. You don't make big, long trips places because you don't have the transportation to get there. That's your life. And while in that world you didn't have things like the Ohio State Buckeyes or the West Virginia Mountaineers or KISS or some rock band or some movie star, you still had this innate wiring in you to want to be associated with something, to want to be associated with some person or something and the crowd of people that goes with it. And so around AD 30, this young, charismatic rabbi named Jesus breaks onto the scene. He comes crashing onto the scene. He shows up at a wedding, and he does his first of many, many miracles in his life. Jesus, up to this point, has remained entirely in the shadows. As about a 30-year-old man, he's remained totally in the shadows. Of course, he had the miraculous virgin birth. He's the son of Mary and Joseph, but not the biological son of Joseph, because it was the Holy Spirit that allowed Mary to become pregnant with Jesus. But for 30 years, Jesus remains in the shadows. He doesn't proclaim that he's the Son of God. He doesn't proclaim that God the Father has sent him to die for the sins of the world. He doesn't do any of that. What he does is he works and he studies. And he goes to school. And as a young rabbi, it means he completed the highest level of schooling in Jewish society. This guy had memorized his Old Testament. That's what the rabbis had to do. How would you like to have that as your schooling? That would be tough to do. But Jesus had done that. And he comes to a wedding in Cana, and John's Gospel, chapter 2, tells us that he shows up. And at the wedding, all the wine runs out. The guests have drank the wine down. And Jesus' mother, Mary, comes to him and she says, Jesus, would you please do something about the fact that there is no wine left at this wedding? And so Jesus calls a group of attendants. He says, come here, guys, bring me some stone jars. Fill the jars up with water. And they bring the stone jars and they pour all kinds of water inside of them. And then Jesus says, there you go. You have your wine. And he turns and he walks off. And the leader of the wedding party walks over and dips something in one of those stone jars and pours it into a cup. And what should have been water is the finest of wines. And when that happens, this young rabbi comes out of the shadows. And when he does that, the fans start to show up. And these people became every bit as crazy in their fanness as we are about things like Buckeye football and our sports teams and our NFL teams. And these crowds begin to follow Jesus. Because the miracle that was performed at the wedding in Cana is the first among a ton of miracles that Jesus starts to perform. Jesus begins to perform miracles, one, because he has compassion on people who need his help. And so he starts to heal people who have been ill, sick, hurting, blind, all kinds of things, mute, crippled. He starts to heal them out of compassion. But two, the reason he heals people is because he needs to give power to his message, because he wants people to believe that he's the Son of God. And so the wedding at Cana is the first among a start of miracles. And healings happen over here, and blind people get sight over there, and crippled people start to walk over here. People get off their mats over there. People lose leprosy. It falls off their skin, and their skin heals over there. And one person after another starts to get healed. And man, oh man, when that happens, do the fans ever show up? They don't have other things to cheer for in the way that we do. But the crowds begin to just build and build and build around Jesus. And tens of thousands of people, ancient Jewish people, begin to follow him wherever he goes. Mark's gospel tells us the story. Mark chapter 1, verse 28 says the news spread about him quickly over the whole region of Galilee. News just went off like a fire, like a bomb. It went off. There's this rabbi, and he teaches like nobody we've ever heard teach, and he performs miracles. You got to see him. Come on. And fans just keep building and building. The crowds get bigger. Listen to what Mark says about the crowds. Chapter 2, verse 2, they gathered in such large numbers that there was no room left, Mark says. Chapter 2, verse 13, a large crowd came to him, and he began to teach them. Chapter 3, verse 7, Mark says that Jesus withdrew with his disciples to the lake, and a large crowd from Galilee followed. Chapter 3, verse 20, it says that then Jesus entered a house, and again a crowd gathered. Chapter 4 says that, again, Jesus began to teach by the lake, and the crowd that gathered around was so large that he got into a boat, and he sat in it out on the lake. So you get this picture just even in the first 4 chapters of Mark's gospel that this crowd is just building and swelling, and people from everywhere are wanting to get close to Jesus. You see, the inner fan existed in the ancient Jews in the way that it exists in you and me. And these people were crazy about being associated with Jesus. They felt like they were a part of a movement. They felt like they were part of something bigger than themselves. And so everybody wanted to be a fan. And even today, there's a whole heck of a lot of fans of Jesus, aren't there? I mean, it's hard not to be a fan of Jesus. Like, you got to be kind of heartless to not be at least some kind of fan of Jesus, right? I mean, the guy healed people. And he walked around with a message that he just kept proclaiming, saying, love your neighbor as yourself. Lay down your life for other people. He would bring children to him when other people would reject children. Women are empowered in the Gospels in a culture that didn't empower women at all. It is women who are the first eyewitnesses to the resurrection. Jesus allowed all that to happen. So Jesus is pro-woman, he's pro-child, he's pro-message of love. He's telling people he's the Son of God, that he's going to save the world. He dies on a cross for sins. He rises from the dead. I mean, it's hard even today not to say, you know what? I'm a fan of Jesus. I want to be associated with that guy because he's a great guy. And man, I like what he's about, and I like what he stands for. And yeah, I'm 2 thumbs up to Jesus. I'm a fan of Jesus. The problem is that Jesus never wanted fans. You know what he wanted? He wanted followers. He wanted fully devoted, completely sold out, laying down every part of their life, followers. He didn't want fans. In fact, Jesus did what celebrities in our culture never do. I shouldn't say never. That's probably a little bit harsh. But most often, celebrities in our culture do not do what Jesus did. Most celebrities embrace the fact that they have lots and lots of fans. Jesus turned fans away left and right and said, either get on the field with me and become a fully and completely devoted follower of me, or go on home. I want you to imagine that as a young boy going to one of those Penn State football games, that I'd gone up to the gate with my dad, and we handed our tickets to the attendant at the gate, and they took our tickets, and they said, "Oh, I'm really sorry. You must not have got the message today. Today, we're not allowing fans into the stadium. We're only allowing people in who are willing to become members of the team and participate in the game on the field. So if you're willing to come and be a member of the team, and to run through everything that it's going to take to be a member of the team. Not just playing the games on Saturdays, but hitting the weight room 5-6 times a week with all the players. You know, running through all the conditioning sessions, studying for your classes late at night because your practices take up your daytime hours. If you're willing to put in the time, the effort, the energy, and the commitment, then you can come on into the stadium today. But if your only desire is to come in and cheer the team on, well, then we're not accepting fans today. You can head back and watch it on TV. And that is essentially what Jesus did to his fans. He said, I want you to either become a fully and completely and in every way devoted follower of me, or you can head on home. Because I don't need more fans. I need followers. And Pathway, all of us, I think, have to wrestle with the question, are we fans of Jesus, or are we sold-out followers? Does Jesus have every part of our lives? Does Jesus have the final authority and say in the kind of lives that we live? Are we just associated with Jesus, rah-rah fans of his message and what he's about, or are we sold out and on the field with him? Because Jesus was crystal clear on what he was looking for. And unfortunately, I believe that in most of us, the fan is winning over the follower inside of us. And I want to show you how Jesus treated his fans. The Jesus that you're going to read here in just a moment is a Jesus that may be a bit perplexing to you. It's a version of Jesus that may not fit into the box you've had of him because you have this image and this picture of what he was like, this image and this picture of what the Son of God must have been like. And maybe some of the words that Jesus is about to speak won't quite compute and won't quite fit in the box you have of who he is. But listen to how Jesus dealt with his fans. We have this story that shows up in Luke's Gospel, chapter 9, verse 57 is where it starts. And it's 5-6 verses long, and it tells the story of Jesus and his fans. And so this crowd comes along, and there's all these people swelling and gathering, and a fan emerges from the crowd. And the fan says to him, verse 57, as they were walking along the road, a man said to him, I will follow you wherever you go. Jesus, I'll follow you wherever you go. So this man does the right thing, right? I mean, you've got these crowds around Jesus. The fans are everywhere. There's probably literally anywhere from a couple thousand to maybe even tens of thousands of people who are around him when this story plays out. And one person emerges from the crowd and says, Jesus, I'll follow you wherever you go. If you go to Samaria, I'm there. You go to the hillsides of Judea, I'm there. Jesus, if you work around the Sea of Galilee, I'm there. Jesus, if you go to another country, I'm there with you. This is fan number one, and I call this fan the big talker. This is the big talker. This is the person who knows what to say. Now, all of us can be a bit of the big talker sometime, right? I mean, if you've hung out in church culture, right? If you've kind of been around church culture, like, we know the buzzwords to say. We've got these buzzwords, and we know how to use them and to impress people with them. Like, man, brother, I'm just repenting of my sin, and I'm following Jesus. I'm just following Jesus. I'm getting into my devotions every day, right? I'm becoming a disciple. And we know all the buzzwords to say, right? We know the things that say that will impress other people and make people go, wow, look at them. They're serious about being a follower of Christ. And so the big talker comes along. Jesus, I'll follow you wherever you go. And Jesus says these words. He says, okay, man, you want to be a follower? Let me tell you what it's going to be like to be my follower. You're telling me the right thing. You're saying the right thing. But here's what it's going to really be like to be my follower. Verse 58. Jesus replied, foxes have dens, and birds, well, they have nests, but the Son of Man has no place to lay his head. So Jesus said to this man, he said, you know what? You're saying all the right words. You're saying the right thing. You want to follow me, and that's exactly what I want. I don't want more fans. I want followers. But here's what you need to understand might happen to you. You might lose the place where you're going to sleep at night. Jesus basically looked at him and said, do you know that in my lifetime, I've never had a home? My service to God the Father has meant that I've sort of been a nomad. And I travel around and I teach, and I do not know where I'm going to lay my head at night. I do not have the guarantee and the protection of a home. And Jesus said, even foxes, little foxes have dens. Even birds have nests, and they know where they're going to go at night, but I do not know where I will sleep every single night. Now, are you still ready to be a follower, knowing that it might cost you your home? Pathway, I might throw the same question at us. You know, if you want to have a litmus test to understand, is the fan inside of me winning, or is the follower inside of me winning? Ask the question of your home. What if following Jesus meant that it might lose you your home? Would you still follow him? And the truth is, I think that many of us know the answer to that question. That very quickly the inner fan gets revealed. And fortunately, Jesus doesn't ask us to just give him our homes or to lose our homes or to no longer have a home. That's not the guaranteed price that is paid to be a follower of Jesus. But what if it was? Because Pathway, do you realize that in many countries around the world, that actually is the price for people? Go to Red Communist China. Go to places like the Middle East, where it is primarily Muslim dominated, and what you will find is people who have literally lost their homes over the fact that they're followers of Jesus. They've lost their homes, they've lost their sources of income, they've lost oftentimes their family support. And what you will find in those places are people who are in every way 110% sold out for Christ. Because a long time ago, the possessions of this world clashed with their relationship with Jesus, and they knew they either had to pick one or the other, and they chose Jesus. And they're followers. And we don't know in this story what this man does. Luke doesn't tell us. Maybe he says, yes, Jesus, I'm serious. I'm really going to follow you wherever you go. Even if it costs me my home, I'll follow you. Or, what I suspect happened, more likely, is that he walked away sad because he realized that it was going to take everything in his life to be a follower of Jesus, and he probably wasn't ready to pay the price. Now that man goes away. We don't know what happened with him, and a second one emerges. And this time, Jesus doesn't wait for the big talker to come out and talk the big game. Jesus points to someone in the crowd. So he points someone out. He says, come on over here. I have something to say to you. You, come over. And somebody, comes over to him. And Luke's gospel records that this is what Jesus says to him. Verse 59. He said to another man, follow me. Very simple. Stop being a fan. Stop hanging out in the crowd. Follow me. I want you to come and I want you to be my follower. I want you to get on the field with me. Get on the team with me. Get into ministry with me. Help me to proclaim the news that I'm the Son of God. Help me to care for the lost sheep of Israel who need to know me. Help me to win people to me. Help me. Be with me. And this particular fan has an answer. Lord, first, let me go bury my father. Now this is fan number 2, and I call this fan the procrastinator. And oh man, this one may hit it home, right? Because we often have a procrastinator inside of us. What scholars think is happening here, the most likely interpretation of what's taking place here, is that this man has a father who is very ill, very old, has not passed away yet. And the man says to Jesus, Jesus, I'm all for following you later. Let me just go home and care for my father. Let me see him off. Let me spend the next 6 months, maybe the next couple years with him until he dies. Then I'll have an inheritance from my father. Then I'll come with you. And if Jesus were a smart businessman, he would have said, that's a great idea. Could you tithe off the inheritance and help us in ministry? But Jesus doesn't do that. Jesus says something to this man that doesn't compute in our box, in our Jesus box. It doesn't fit in our understanding of what his personality was like. Jesus says these words in verse 60 in response to this man's request to procrastinate. Jesus said to him, let the dead bury their own dead, but you go and proclaim the kingdom of God. Jesus said, look, there's plenty of dead people in this world. Let them bury their dead. I'm here to make dead people come to life. I'm here to, spiritually speaking, raise the dead. And I need your help right now. I don't need your help a year from now or 2 years from now. I need your help right now. So you go and start proclaiming the kingdom of heaven right now. And if you don't want to do that, then leave and stay where you're at. Because I'm here for followers. I'm not here for more fans. Now, Pathway, this doesn't compute with our understanding of Jesus. I mean, doesn't that sound a little heartless for him to say? Doesn't that fall outside of our Jesus box and who we think he is and what he thinks he wants? And then a third fan comes along. Still another said to him, I will follow you, Lord, but first let me go back and say goodbye to my family. Now here comes a third fan, and this one also emerges from the crowd. They self-identify as somebody who wants to become a follower. And so they come up to the Lord, they come up to Jesus, and they say, I'll follow you. I will, I promise. Just let me go back. Let me say goodbye to my family. You know, my mom is really not going to want me to do this. I need to kiss her goodbye. I need to hug her. I need to hug my dad. I need to explain to them why it is that I'd leave the family business and why it is that I'd come with you, Jesus. I need to go to my siblings. And I know they're going to be upset because I'm not going to see, my nieces and nephews as often. I need to go and have those conversations, Jesus, and talk to everybody in my family, and then I'll come and I'll follow you. This is fan number 3, and I call him the hesitator. He was hesitant. And Jesus knew that if this man went back and said goodbye to his family, that the allure and the draw and the power of family very likely would take him out. He was hesitant. And so Jesus said something that to us feels utterly heartless for him to have said. And he uses an agricultural reference, and he says this to the man. He says, no one who puts his hand to the plow or looks back is fit for service in the kingdom of heaven. Jesus basically looked at the man and said, stop hesitating. If you put your hands to the plow and you drive that plow through a field and you look back, you're not fit to be on my team. You're just a fan. You see, Pathway, I think all of us have to deeply wrestle with this question. Are we fans or are we followers? Does Jesus have all of us, or does Jesus just have a part of us? Do we want to hold on to most of our life and just be associated with the teachings of Jesus, or do we want to go all in on the field and be a follower of Jesus? And you need to know, as you wrestle with that question these next couple of weekends in this series, that Jesus was crystal clear on what he's looking for. And he made no room on his team for fans. And so, Pathway, I'm going to ask you to start deeply wrestling with that question. Am I a fan or am I a follower? Does Jesus get every part of me or just a little piece of me? And over the next 3 weekends, we're going to take a deep dive into some very challenging areas of life where it's hard sometimes to be a follower. where the cost of being a follower feels great to us and we prefer sometimes to stay in the fan zone. We're going to take a deep dive on a couple areas of life and challenge you to make the decision to become a fully and completely and in every way devoted follower of Christ. Let's bow our heads and pray. Lord Jesus, we ask you to help us to be followers. God, right now, there are many of us who are feeling the stirring in our spirit saying, I've been a fan, I've been a fan, I've been a fan. I've just associated myself with Jesus, but I have not followed Jesus. God, today, would that change? Would that change? Would the inner fan be put to death so that the inner follower can come to life and follow all of the teachings of Jesus and live a sold-out life for the kingdom of heaven? God, make us followers today. Use this series, Lord, to help us to become followers of Christ. Everybody stay in a moment of prayer. Each and every weekend, we invite people to meet Jesus. And if you're here today and you've never started a relationship with Jesus Christ, I want you to know that that can change today. You don't have to stay lost. You don't have to stay in darkness. You don't have to stay far from God. You can meet God today, but you've got to turn your life over to His Son. So I'm going to pray a prayer and invite you to pray it with me. Just pray this prayer with me now if you're ready. Lord Jesus, today I invite you into my life. I've been a sinner and I've rebelled against God, and I need you to forgive me. Thank you for dying on a cross for me. Thank you for rising from the dead for me. Please come into my life. I want to turn everything over to you today. If you're praying that prayer this morning, nobody is looking, but I am looking, and I would love to know. Would you slip your hand in the air if you're praying that prayer this morning? Thank you. Anybody else? Thank you. Anybody else? Thank you for those hands, guys. Thank you. Amen. Let's rise and worship God.